Hello there, Force of Will players. My name's Charlie DeMel, and today I'm going to be bringing you a deck list for, if you haven't seen the title of the video already, Welser. So I really like Epic of the Dragon Lord Welser. His playstyle is just very combo-y, and as someone who, for the most part, mainly plays Yu-Gi-Oh!, I really like combo decks and combo lines and stuff like that. So I built this deck kind of with a little help from like Derek Muguaneza and some other people like that. However, this is primarily kind of my own brainchild with this take on it. We had a different version, but I'm going to be showing you my version of this. If you remember on my ruler tier list, I did rate Welser down in the C tier. I don't really know how consistent, how potent, how any of that stuff will be for the deck. I don't think it gets to really beat the more meta-defining decks, so like Feith, Muj, Carlina, stuff like that. However, I do think the deck is very fun, and I do think it has a lot of potential. So, getting into it, here is the list. Here is our boy, Welser. If you, here we can just search him real quick. If you're unaware, the primary way of how he combos is with chants. So on his flip side, whenever a chant you play would be sent to the grave, you get to add it back to your hand. It's an automatic trigger. And then he's practically unkillable barrier with no stats. Just can't really die. And then you get to draw 5 and shuffle your grave and everything back into your deck when he judgments. His judgment requirement is you have to have 10 or more magic stones. And he costs, it's 0 to judgment. And then he gets to recover stones. So pretty early on, you can kind of see what we're going for here. It's already a Lycaon toolbox. Lycaon, just super powerful, right? The other thing is Priscia with Welser, because every time you play your first chant each turn you recover a stone. You can do some pretty nutty stuff even without the Melfi line that Feith Muj uses in order to get to Lycaon. So like for example with Welser, you can play on your turn one big show for free, right? Because it just untaps the stone. There's no reason not to if you weren't going to play anything else. And then on your opponent's turn, you get to play another big show for free. And then when you move into your next turn, right, you have one untapped stone. You can play big show. It recovers because of Welser. You play another big show, and then it stays tapped, and then it recovers for turn, and then you can play a third big show, and then drop all your Lycaons, and that was just off of a singular mana, right? And then you have one other stone that you can do whatever with. So that's the whole idea. Big Show is a much more potent way of activating Lycaon than Melfi into Big Show is in Welser specifically. Again, Melfi Big Show is much more prominent within Feith Muj. So that's what we got here. We all know Lycaon, Priscia, and Melfi, right? Seal of Wind and Water. This is a Kaguya card. We don't have the Force Resonance effect, but we do have return target non-magic stone, non-J-ruler entity, so resonators, additions, whatever. You control to its owner's hand, recover up to 2 target magic stones you control. I'll be getting into this in a little bit. It's toolboxy, right? You get Melfi, you get Priscia, like you can just get extra stuff. You can add Lycaon back to your hand, and I'll get into why this is in the deck in just a minute while we get through the rest of the deck. Loki enters the Game of Gods. Singular blue, produce 1 will of any attribute, and then you draw a card. You're almost never going to use it for the target J-Res gets minus 2,000. However, it is nice that it's in there. It's kind of like a fog effect that Welser used to have, but it's only for a singular target, so it doesn't get around like barrier and stuff like that. Number 13, Anti-Magic. Again, same thing. Welser will add back all your chants to your hand when he's on his flip side. So with number 13, if you're at Seal 7, you get to play free counterspells over and over and over and over again. So your opponent doesn't get to play any cards. How fun. Dogra Mongra, this is your combo kill. Don't worry about it right now. I'll explain how all this stuff works. How the deck eventually functions is you produce infinite mana and you draw infinite cards when you flip Welser. So, and I'll explain how all that works. Feasting and Yggdrasil, these two work in tandem with each other. So Feasting also works off of the Lycaons, right? So you have that play line. The other thing is your Yggdrasil, since it counts as a chant when you play it, it untaps your stone. So if you go turn 1 Yggdrasil and you untap the stone, you go into your opponent's next turn with 1 untapped will and an addition in play, which means your Feasting, again, it's not entities, it's additions, it got eroded. Your Feasting has a value of X equals 1. So you can cancel whatever your opponent tries to play if they try to do large like OTK lines, specifically a Nyarlathotep. You have an answer to Nyarlathotep trying to kill you. So Yggdrasil, Feasting, very powerful options for you. Again, Feasting you can also get with Prisia. You're playing 8 editions in this deck already, so Feasting is going to have a large value. Moving on, Magic Stone Dance of Chaos, the Nyarlathotep cards. So we used to have to just rely on Yggdrasil in order to ramp out Welser earlier. However, now we have Nyar's cards, which give us free stones. These are the 2 most prominent ones, being chance. There are other options like Phantasmal Ascendant, Ambushing Scorpion. You could technically play Red Wine and Bread. However, these were the more potent and powerful options, specifically for this deck, and because they're chance. So with this one gives you 3 stones, right? So I mean that's just absurd. Doesn't do anything else, just gives you 3 stones. Sudden Manifestation of Power will draw you a card, so it kind of replaces itself. So it's effectively 0 mana if it's your first one played, right? Welser will refund it, and then you get an extra stone, and then you draw a card. So it functions very well within the deck, ramping out your stones. Garyon is just there as extra tech value for cancels and stuff like that, okay? You could probably replace Garyon with 2 more Melfies, things like that. Okay, stone lineup, super simple. For Bradstone, you're probably going to activate it turn 2 because you're always going to try and Yggdrasil on turn 1. So your Bradstones are active immediately. Magic Stone of the 6 Sages is active practically immediately. And then Epic Stone of the Element, you're primarily in green regardless, so it should be active most of the time. Now then, going into the combos, how this deck functions. So, Loki enters the Game of Gods, infinitely draws your deck if Welser is flipped. It's just how it is, because every time you play Loki enters the Game of Gods, you'll produce 1 will of any attribute, and then you draw a card. So you produce blue, you draw a card, and then Loki enters the Game of Gods goes back into your hand because of Welser's flip. So Loki enters the Game of Gods will draw every card in your deck if you need it to, okay? That's partially why it's in here. It's just a very good tech option, and it goes infinite by itself. Seal of Wind and Water, this is your other infinite. What happens is after Loki enters the Game of Gods and you go through your entire deck, or if you just have any already sitting in play, you use Seal of Wind and Water in order to return Lycaon to your hand after playing it off of a Lycaon activation, right? That will then recover 2 stones. So you recover 2 stones. You can then replay the Lycaon, and then you add the Seal of Wind and Water back to your hand with Welser, which means you can then replay Seal of Wind and Water with Lycaon, re-add the Lycaon back to your hand, recover the stones, etc., etc. If you've played 0 chance whatever turn it is somehow, like Welser's flipped, you've played 0 chance, whatever it might be, you can still Seal of Wind and Water Lycaon back and start going infinite mana with it if you have 1 mana. Because the first one... Well, actually, do you even need 1 mana? Did I do my math wrong? So you play the Seal of Wind and Water to return a Lycaon in play off of the Lycaon effect, and you recover 2 stones. And then Lycaon will then cost 2. Yeah, okay, you don't need any mana. Yeah. So you can still go infinite with this, even if you've played 0 chance. Okay? So that is the power of the Seal of Wind and Water Lycaon thing. So Lycaon's Seal of Wind and Water gives you infinite mana. Loki enters the Game of Gods gives you infinite cards. And then eventually you Daggermagra, draw Daggermagra, and then kill them. So that is how this deck functions. That's really all it is. I don't have a sideboard built. Sideboards, I don't really believe in building sideboards off of like a Theorycraft or anything like that. You build sideboards for tournaments, what you expect to be there. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that I would really add, other than like maybe differing counter spells or potentially other combo options or things like that. But this is my version of Welser that I have built. Love to see maybe someone try it out at their locals. Let me know how it goes in the comment section, or feel free to DM me on Facebook or Discord or anything like that. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your day. See ya.